Hello. On the night before Christmas in the year 2000, a 16-year-old girl went out with a friend to the city shopping center to buy Christmas presents. After they finished shopping, they said goodbye and went their separate ways to go home. Nobody imagined that the 16-year-old would leave that evening and never come back. What followed was one of the largest, most resource-intensive searches in the history of criminal investigations in the United Kingdom. The place where this happened was the city of Leeds, which sits roughly in the geographical centre of the UK. The main person in our story is a young girl named Leanne Tiernan. She was born in September 1984. Her father was Michael Tiernan and her mother was Sharon Hawkhead. Her parents divorced when she was young, and she grew up mostly with her mother. Leanne was an optimistic, strong young woman, an excellent student with top marks, and she attended Weckletees High School. She was cheerful, confident, and well liked by many at school. But on a late November afternoon in 2000, only weeks before Christmas, a terrible misfortune struck her. What exactly happened that day? To answer that, we have to go back and reconstruct the last hours she spent with her friend. On Sunday, November 26, 2000, Leanne did not have to go to school. With Christmas only a month away, she decided to meet her best friend Sarah for an afternoon of shopping in the city centre of Leeds. The two girls hopped between different shopping centres across Leeds, browsing the stores, laughing, and picking out presents for their families. They spent the day together enjoying themselves, as teenagers do, with no reason to worry anyone. When they were done, they caught a bus to return home. They ate together at a small eatery called Bramley in the northwest part of Leeds. After their meal, the bus reached Bramley station and both girls got off together. They walked up Hotel Road toward their neighborhoods, and at a certain point they hugged and said goodbye. From there, each of them would walk the short distance back to her own house. Sarah's home was not far away and she headed straight home. Leanne took a shortcut through a small patch of woods, a narrow, dimly lit path that she used often because it shaved minutes from her journey home. It was the kind of route teenagers take when they want to get home quickly. After arriving home, Sarah did what any anxious friend would do. She called Leanne Tiernan to make sure she'd made it back safely. Leanne Tiernan's mother answered the phone and told Sarah that Leanne had not come home yet. That surprised and worried Sarah because the place where they'd parted was so close to both their houses. If Sarah had already arrived, Leanne should have been home too. Sarah's worry grew, and she told Leanne Tiernan's mother about her concern. Leanne Tiernan's mother, hearing her daughter was missing, tried to calm herself with small, common thoughts. Perhaps Leanne had met friends on the way. Perhaps she had stopped somewhere nearby. Perhaps she would call to explain. So she waited a little longer, assuming the situation would resolve itself. But as minutes became half an hour, and then an hour, the worry turned into fear. Typically when Leanne was delayed, she would ring home to say where she was or what had happened. But that evening she did not. At about 30 minutes after they parted, her mother decided to call Leanne Tiernan's mobile. The phone rang briefly and then disconnected. She called back several times and each time the call cut off after a single ring. This strange pattern of the phone ringing for a moment and then dropping made the family uneasy. By early evening, still no sign of Leanne. The family's worry deepened and, fearing the worst, her mother made the difficult decision to report her missing to the local police. The police took the report seriously. From the first moment they treated this as an urgent inquiry and began to mobilize resources. They concentrated their search around the place where the girls had separated and along the route Leanne would have taken home. This included a small wood called Hubley Gill, a patch of overgrown trees and scrub that locals knew well and which the girl would cross to reach her house quickly. That night, in the dim light, more than 200 police officers and volunteers were mobilized to comb the entire wood. Search teams moved carefully through the trees. Villagers joined hands with the police, and flashlights swept the undergrowth. Despite the scale of the search, the first night's sweep turned up nothing. There were no footprints that led conclusively to a clue, no items left behind that shouted for attention. On the following day, the police widened their efforts and turned to technology for help. They began to track Leanne Tiernan's mobile phone. Telecom data showed the phone had briefly turned on at a certain point and then been switched off permanently. The police called and sent text messages to the number but received no response. Simultaneously, they obtained search warrants to check the houses, garages and shops within an 800-meter radius of the wood. Officers personally searched some 800 properties and inspected 150 shops in the area. Nothing immediately suspicious was found. Teams also checked refuse bins, searched nearby watercourses, and launched an aerial search with helicopters. Sniffer dogs were brought in to pick up any scent that might lead to a trail. Volunteers and officers worked in shifts, scanning hedgerows and drains. The local community rallied, handing out flyers and posting posters, hoping someone, somewhere, might have seen a detail that could break the case open. Still, few solid leads emerged. The police broadened their investigative net and collected DNA samples from a large pool of local men, roughly 140 individuals who lived near the area or who had been seen around the wood. Specialist units from across agencies, including the County Search Center, maritime units and traffic police, pooled resources in search of a trace. The local newspaper and regional TV carried the story, and public interest grew. 1 week after Leanne disappeared, the town's worry turned to active help. A local businessman, moved by the family's distress, donated £10,000 as a reward for any information that might help find Leanne or identify her whereabouts. As the story grew in the media, many people called the police with sightings and tips. Some reported seeing girls who resembled Leanne. Others claimed to have seen suspicious vehicles near the wood. Each lead was followed up and, in most cases, discounted after verification. The police remained cautious, thanking the public and urging only verified, reliable information. 9 days after Leanne vanished, a new witness came forward with something more concrete. They said that at about the time Leanne disappeared, they had seen a man walking a dog in the wood. They could not identify the man but gave details. He was roughly 1.73 meters tall, slightly heavy-set, with a round face marked by red blotches and scars, wearing a dark wool hat, a jacket and jeans. Using that description, the police worked with forensic artists to produce an identikit and release the image to the public. Police searched approximately 1.750 buildings in and around the area, checked 32 drainage shafts and combed over 3 kilometers of sewers. Rubbish collection in the local district was temporarily suspended so officers could sift through every bin in case a piece of evidence had been discarded. The search became one of the largest and most exhaustive inquiries the regional force had ever undertaken. As weeks turned into months, the community's hope was strained, but many still believed Leanne might be found alive. Then, months later, a grim discovery was made. A body was found wrapped in 9 green plastic bags, bound with yellow cable ties around the neck, with the hands tied behind the back. The discovery shocked the town and led to the formal identification of the body as that of Leanne Tiernan, who had been missing for over 9 months. Forensic examination determined the cause of death to be asphyxiation. The body had been remarkably well preserved, and specialists in forensic biology examined heart tissue and microstructures carefully. By analyzing the degree of decomposition together with known ambient temperature records, they concluded that Leanne Tiernan's body had been kept in a cold environment, most likely a freezer, for an extended period and had only been dumped in the place where it was found several weeks before discovery. This finding changed the character of the investigation from a missing person inquiry into a full homicide investigation. At the post-mortem, the forensic pathologist also noted other important traces. The yellow cable ties found around the neck and wrists were of a specific brand and type, manufactured by a company based in Devon and sold in limited batches. A few small pieces of red nylon carpet were recovered from Leanne Tiernan's clothing. Critically, forensic scientists located a single human hair on the victim's neck that did not match Leanne Tiernan's own DNA profile, indicating it likely belonged to the perpetrator. These evidential threads allowed detectives to build a more focused inquiry. They launched what they called Operation Colourfer, comparing each sample carefully to the hair found on the body. One man eventually moved into focus. His name was John Tiernan. He had been born on August 27, 1956, in Leeds and, according to neighbours, was divorced about 4 years earlier and living alone not far from the area where Leanne lived. He lived about 1.2 kilometers from the small wood. Some residents had seen him wandering near Lie War and around the paths leading to the wood. On the face of it, John appeared to be a quiet man who kept many small animals and was, but a series of links began to emerge between John and items found at the scene. The leather choker found around Leanne Tiernan's neck was traced to a company in Nottingham which distributed that product to 220 retailers. When police contacted the 112th retailer, they discovered that the store only sold by order and had made 3 deliveries to the Leeds area. One of the order records included the name of John Tiernan. Additionally, the distinctive yellow cable ties were traced to a manufacturer in Italy which stated that 99% of that specific batch had been sold to a multinational courier firm called Royal. Royal had a subsidiary named Passive Ford Worldwide, and among its employees was a delivery operative who matched the description of the suspect. When forensic scientists returned the DNA comparison results, the case took an even more decisive turn. John's DNA matched the hair sample taken from the body. Police also found other corroborating pieces of evidence at locations linked to John. They began to assemble a picture that made it increasingly difficult to regard the disappearance as anything other than a deliberate, violent assault followed by concealment of the crime. On October 16, 2001, while further investigations and searches were continuing, detectives arrested John and obtained a warrant to search his property. They sealed off his garden and the wasteland behind his house and carefully searched every building at the address. Investigators discovered 3 large freezers in his home, along with lengths of yellow cable ties and green plastic bags like those used to wrap the victim. They also found a small piece of red carpet nailed to a floorboard. Microscopic analysis of the carpet fibers showed a match to the fibers found on Leanne Tiernan's clothing. Pollen specialists took samples from John's garden and matched the pollen profile to that discovered in Leanne Tiernan's nose and hair, suggesting she had been in his garden at some point before her death. Faced with this mounting and multifaceted forensic evidence, John ultimately made admissions about his conduct. He told investigators that on November 26 he had been walking in Hubley Hill when Leanne happened to pass by. In his account, he claimed he acted on impulse, grabbed her, and bound her hands behind her back with a dog chain he kept at home. He said he covered her mouth with his coat to prevent her screaming and forced her to his house. There, he claimed, she struggled and in the commotion fell and hit her head on the floor. He said that, in a panic and to make her comply, he put something around her neck which led to her death. Detectives, however, were skeptical of the story that the death was accidental. They pointed to evidence showing the attack had been choreographed, the restraints, the manner of binding, the removal and concealment of the body, and the fact the body had been frozen for an extended period before being disposed of. All suggested planning and deliberation rather than a simplistic, panicked accident. The coat, which he claimed had been used to cover her mouth, had left fibers and traces at the scene consistent with a sustained assault. On February 15, 2002, more than a year after the disappearance and following pre-trial hearings, a court session took place at Lie Cloud Court. John admitted to abducting Leanne, and was remanded in custody as the legal process unfolded. The trial that followed delved into the grim details of the forensic evidence and witness testimony. After a series of hearings and a lengthy legal process that examined both the forensic science and the pattern of John's behavior, the prosecution presented a strong case that connected him not only to Leanne, but to other unsolved offenses. On August 7, 2012, in court, John finally admitted to murdering Leanne. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life tariff, meaning he would not be eligible for release. Detective Inspector Grab, who led the investigation, commented after the sentence that they did not believe this was John's first major crime. The manner of the offense, the concealment methods and the careless expertise with which he had attempted to hide the body led investigators to re-examine a series of older unsolved sexual assaults in the region. After careful review, they found links and matching features in several cases stretching back decades, strengthening the view that John may have been a serial sexual offender over a period of about 25 years. The sentencing brought an end to the formal criminal case, but it could not restore what was lost. On September 28, 2001, Leanne Tiernan's family held a funeral to say goodbye to their daughter. It would have been her birthday, a date that, for them, would have become a grim marker of the life she never lived beyond the age of 16. In the aftermath, the community reflected on the tragedy and its implications for safety and the protection of young people. People were reminded how sudden violence can be, and how important it is for communities to look out for one another and for individuals to take simple precautions when walking alone. For Leanne Tiernan's parents, friends and the many who followed the case, it remains a painful memory and a warning. They have thanked the officers who worked tirelessly on the investigation, the volunteers who searched in bad weather, and the many members of the public who came forward with information, even when that information proved to be only a small part of the puzzle. This case also highlighted the power of forensic science and persistent police work. Trace evidence, a single hair, fragments of carpet, specialized cable ties, the provenance of a leather choker, coupled with modern DNA techniques and painstaking investigative work, ultimately allowed detectives to link the crime to the perpetrator and secure a conviction. Yet no amount of scientific success can fully heal the grief of a family who lost a child. Nor can it restore the life that was taken. As a closing thought, be careful when you are alone. Lock your doors and remain aware of your surroundings. Small actions and simple vigilance can sometimes make a difference in dangerous situations, though sadly they cannot prevent all harm. This is the full account of what happened to Leanne Tiernan, told to keep her memory alive and to remind viewers of the hard work of those who seek justice. Thank you for listening to this story. We will see you next time when we bring you another case. Goodbye.